Well, welcome to the Realtor Rant, where we discuss real estate without the fluff. I'm Holly Barrett with my bestie, Alana O'Hanlon, and today we're with Tyler Cauble, an Asheville native. Tyler has significantly influenced the city's real estate through his leadership at the Cauble Group. He's renowned for his vision in transforming spaces like the old Peerless Mill in Chattanooga into vibrant, community-centric developments. Tyler shares his knowledge through his book, Open for Business, and his podcast, The Commercial Real Estate Investor, providing a deep dive into commercial real estate investment strategies. His commitment extends beyond development, focusing on community enhancement and sustainable growth in Nashville. Tyler, thank you for coming on the Realtor Rant.
Holly, Alana, thanks for having me. That's a great introduction. I appreciate that.
Yeah, welcome.
You're welcome. So let's just dive into it. I was thinking there's so many cool avenues we could take with you because you have so many cool projects going on. I guess let's start with how I found you. I discovered you. And that is because I own a duplex super close, like a block away from the Peerless Mill, which you acquired. And it's a super cool project. I hope everyone that's listening kind of follows Tyler and that project because it's a big one. And it's just this old abandoned mill in Rossville, Georgia, which is right on the border of Chattanooga. It's basically a Chattanooga. It's 10 minutes south of the city. But isn't it kind of like a forgotten little place? Like, what attracted you to Rossville and that property?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's a little border town that used to be where all of the money was in that region back in the day. You know, that factory was founded in the 1910s, is when they started construction on it. And that entire town of Rossville was built around that mill. I mean, it is the true definition of a mill town. To put it in perspective, they employed over 3,000 people at the peak. And today there's 4,500 people that live in Rossville. So you can imagine how back in the day, literally everything revolved around this mill. I found it because we were working on I bought a tower in downtown Chattanooga over off of East 7th. And whenever I consider moving into another city with our investments, I like to kind of achieve scale, right? So what are the bigger projects that we can work on that will help us justify driving 2 hours to spend time in Chattanooga, right? And so while I was there working on that tower, I was talking to our contractor and I said, hey, you know, what else is unique and interesting, kind of like this tower that we should look at? And he said, well, there's this, you know, abandoned mill about 10 minutes south of here. You know, I know the owner, he'd be willing to sell it. So we went and toured it. We were there for probably a couple hours, didn't even scratch the surface of seeing this property. It probably takes you 3 to 4 hours to walk through. It's 29 buildings on 32 acres, about 1.5 million square feet. So I want to say it's like 80 football fields worth of space, give or take.
Wow.
So it's quite a bit, but it's one of those once in a lifetime deals. You know, I mean, we bought it for $3 a square foot, right? Unbelievably cheap, but it was mostly abandoned. There's a couple of tenants there. And so we're going through the process of preparing to bring it back. So it's taken us a couple of years to get it to where it is now, but I'm about to drop about 1.5 million into an indoor climate controlled self-storage facility in 2 of the buildings. We're about to put a new roof on for one of the tenants and then hopefully kick everything else off. We're working through some sports tourism ideas, doing some kind of indoor climate controlled sports facilities there, which will be pretty cool. And I mean, there's just a ton of opportunity with that site.
Is pickleball going to be one of the sports facilities that you're putting in there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the nice thing about pickleball is, you know, one of our tenants is the largest manufacturer of basketball courts in the country. So they do all the NBA, NCAA basketball courts. And, you know, the nice thing about pickleball is you can very easily set up on one of those courts. So as part of the sports facilities that we're doing there, we're hoping to do basketball tournaments, soccer tournaments, football, lacrosse, volleyball, and pickleball.
Very cool.
Well, I'm curious about feedback you've gotten from the locals because I don't live there, but that's where one of our properties is. So, you know, my ring gets notified often of all of the interesting evening events that take place.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So that place desperately needs this. So I'm just kind of like, are people telling you they're really excited about what you're doing?
Oh yeah, it's really cool. I mean, just about everybody that we talk to that's from there has a story about the mill. You know, their parents met there or their grandparents worked there or, you know, something along those lines, which is pretty cool. And yeah, I mean, everybody's pretty excited about it. I mean, we had a mayor, the last administration, administration that was stalling the deal and wouldn't push it forward, and was doing some very unsavory things in order to make that happen. So I had to go before the council and basically push for ousting the mayor, which was interesting. I've never had to do that before, but I went and kind of exposed everything that he was doing. And I mean, you thought that pitchforks and torches were about to come out, because he had been single-handedly stalling the project from moving forward. And everybody else in that town wants it to happen. Like, they desperately want it to happen. They know what it can be. And so that was quite the adventure. I can now add to my resume that I've gotten a mayor fired.
Wow. And what was his motive if the town wanted it? What was his motive to stall or prevent the project from happening?
I mean, it's all speculation, right? Some of the comments that I got from the constituents there after I kind of shared at the city council meeting what was going on were, you weren't paying him under the table. And, so I heard that multiple times, which obviously I just don't operate that way. So it wasn't even a thought that had crossed my mind. And kind of looking back, I'm like, maybe that was it. I don't know. I think that he might have had some ulterior motives with a different buyer group that was in with him or in his pockets, that he wanted the mill to stagnate so that we would have to sell it, and then his other group could come in. So, I mean, there's a couple of different, routes that it could have gone, but in the best case scenario, he was just an incompetent mayor, right? That had no idea how to pull a project together. And it's not like we need a significant amount of support from the city, but when you're doing a project of that scale, it is basically a public-private partnership, right? You have to have the support of the city to be doing a lot of the type of work that you're wanting to do, right? We had to go through a couple of rezonings. You've got to go through all sorts of approvals for different types of uses that you're looking to do. And so you really have to have the city on your side.
All right. So a lot of our listeners are residential realtors. And let's be real, shit's really hard right now. Not a fun time to be a residential realtor. It's just the truth. It sucks. Honestly. It's not a great market.
Unless you're in new construction, right?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
It seems to be the only thing selling right now.
Yeah, it is not super fun right now. And
I do love selling new construction.
do you? I wonder if
it paid great, and it's like, here's my client, take care of them. Mwah, love you.
I wonder if a lot of realtors are secretly, quietly thinking, should I switch to commercial? Especially when they see your videos and how fun it looks. What would you say to a residential realtor that is contemplating this? Because I've looked into it, and to me, it looks like, I have a business degree, I have all the stuff. I think, that could be a track I might take in the future, but it seems like a years long track. Thousands of dollars to get into some of these, the credentials and the associations that you need to join to be like legit. So I guess my question is like ABC 1, 2, 3, like simplified. Does it make sense for a residential realtor to even bother? Is it worth it? And what should they do to baby step?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I would say for the overwhelming majority of residential realtors, no, it makes no sense at all. It's a very different selling process. It's a very different network. It's a very different type of real estate. The thing that I say is like, yeah, they're both real estate, but would you go and hire a business attorney to represent you in a divorce? Well, a divorce attorney and a business attorney both have legal degrees, but they practice completely different areas of the law, right? And so it takes about 3 to 5 years before a commercial real estate agent really understands what they're doing and can start making money. So, the nice thing about residential real estate is it's far more flexible, right? You can dabble in it as much as you want, or you can take it very seriously, treat it like a business, grow a team. You know what I mean? Like, we all know plenty of people that sell a few houses a year and they're happy with that. And we also know the people that are doing 10 a month, right? Commercial real estate, you very much have to treat it closer to that type of residential agent that's building a team and doing 10 deals a month. It's much more of a business. It's if you're not actively in it every day, it's just really hard for you to stay on top of the deals. Most of our deals get done off market, right? So it's very different from residential real estate, right? We don't have an MLS. So you have to stay on top of networking and talking to people and, keeping your feelers out there in the market. Just be aware of what's transacting. So for some residential real estate agents, I think it's a great move, right? Especially if you're more numbers oriented, more logically based, whereas I feel like a lot of residential selling is very emotional, right? Like, oh, I can't picture my kids growing up in this backyard, okay, I don't really know how to sell that. Whereas, hey, this office space is 3,000 square feet. It's in the part of town that you wanted it to be in, and it fits your budget, right? Like, okay, let's go. So it's a very different different style. You also, I mean, kind of going back to earlier where you can't really dabble in it, you can't be a residential agent and be successful in either, in my opinion. Now, that's not to say that you could do residential and commercial and make a decent amount of money. Sure. But if you want to be a true commercial agent and actually make money, I mean, I know plenty of brokers that are making $400,000, $500,000, $750,000 plus a year. They don't touch single family homes because it's two different clienteles, right? So how are you going to market effectively to both? You really can't. It's two different knowledge bases. So how are you going to properly understand both? It's a much different process. And so for those that are willing to do it, I say, jump in. You got to go all in. You got to move to a commercial real estate brokerage and take it seriously. It'll probably be 6 to 12 months before you make a dollar. And then it'll probably be 3 to 5 years before you really start making money. So like the biggest difference between the two financially, like on the residential real estate side, you can come out and you can make 6 figures your first year. Like if you know a bunch of people or you're really good at networking or you're just pounding the phones, right? It's very easy. Commercial real estate is next to impossible to do that because the deals take a really long time. It is a hard group to break into and the learning curve is just so steep that it takes you a while. So in the short term, residential real estate is a lot better for cash. In the long term, commercial is better for cash. But it all depends on what you want to commit to. They're both good.
What made you decide to go the commercial real estate route? Because you never sold residential. Is that correct?
Never did. I mean, hell, I didn't know anything about it. I dropped out of college and got a job offer. I got lucky.
So you were in the right place at the right time.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I had been in sales for a few years before all of that. And I had actually sold to this developer. And when he heard that I had dropped out of college and moved back, he wanted me to come work for him. I mean, that was just kind of how it went down. So there was never an active choice. I'm glad that it worked out the way it did because I really fall better in line with the type of selling that we do in commercial real estate. The firm that I worked for did everything. It was a boutique development firm. So by the time I left, we had about 1,000 townhomes either under construction, in permitting, or in planning. We had done a couple 100,000 square feet of industrial. We had 150,000 square feet of retail. We had a mid-rise in Midtown. And I really got a feel for everything, but we had a residential agent in-house, right? If you got that many townhomes, you're going to have somebody selling them. And so he decided to move out to California and they looked at me and said, well, you've got a real estate license, sell this house. And it was a $1.2 million custom house, which, back in 2014, so that was a very expensive house, right? And I was looking at it like, hell yeah, I'm going to get, $40,000 commissions. Let's go. I'm all about this. And did a bunch of open houses and I will never do that again. I will never do it again. Oh my gosh. I did an open house every weekend for like 2 months. And what I realized was, I could sell the hell out of commercial real estate. I can't do this because it's a very different approach. The joke that I make, kind of made it earlier, was something that was actually said to me at one of those open houses where this couple walked in. And they were like, oh my gosh, we love the house. We love the layout. I just can't imagine my kids growing up in a house painted this color. Well, it was like that beige tan wall color that is like inside 90% of homes in the United States, right? It's like it was a modern farmhouse. Like that to me was the craziest thing I ever heard. And I was like, what color do you want it painted? I'll start painting it right. You give me an offer. I'll paint it myself right now. And because of that, they walked out. I was like, okay, well, this is not for me.
I've had many of those conversations and I'm like, it's just paint. You want it to be neutral. So then you can come in and envision your child living in the color that they want to paint the walls. And you're not painting over black, which would be a lot harder to do than painting over a light neutral color.
People don't understand that that's a very easy thing to fix, right?
Oh yeah. I encourage them to when I'm in my buyer consultations to think of the things that they would want to change to make the home their own and put their own unique style on it. So when they're actually going into the home, they're already pre-thinking okay, it's okay that I make changes and do things to make this my own space.
That's right. Yeah, it's far more common in the commercial industry for tenants to know that they're going to have to do work to anything, right? They typically don't expect to be able to just walk into a space and turn the keys. There are situations like that, but if you think about it, if you're Starbucks, you've got an incredibly detailed branding packet, down to the wood selections for the bar, right? And so they know they're going to be doing work. So it's a very different mindset walking into it.
Well, let's pivot over to your coaching because I'm really interested to learn more about that. Who is the target for it's called Accelerator. Am I getting that?
Yeah, the Siri Accelerator.
Yeah. Who's
So
that built for?
yeah, so I mean, it's an interesting commercial real estate investment approach. Basically, what I built was what I wish I had when I first got started because I didn't have anybody to show me the ropes. You can read all the books in the world, but still have no idea how to actually apply it. And so that's a lot of what we do. I don't have we have 2 coaching calls a week. I don't have an agenda for either call. So the students are bringing in deals, and we're actively working through those deals, running the numbers, analyzing the market, walking through next steps. It's that level of hands-on work in the mastermind. It does include, some training on kind of laying the foundation of commercial real estate investing. And then we have quarterly in-person meetups. But it's a lot of fun. I mean, we've got over 100 members now. I wouldn't have thought that would be such a big part of my day-to-day. If you had asked me that 5 years ago when I started the YouTube channel, it was just one of those things where people started watching the videos and they were like, hey, do you have a course? Really want to kind of learn the next step of this. And then I was like, well, no, maybe I should put a course together. So we did that. And then it became hey, do you have any, workshops, or are you doing anything in Nashville and training people on how to do this? And I was like, no, maybe we should start doing that. So it just kind of organically came up that way. And it's great. I mean, we've got, students closing their first deals. We've got students closing their, we just had one that finished a $1.3 million ground up development for his first one. We've got one that's about to go raise about $3 million in capital to do another one. So it's fun to just get to work on this and nerd out over commercial real estate.
That's super cool. So then what about, do you, inside your community, are you helping, say you have a newbie, very little to no capital at all, but has a vision, is hungry, ready to go find deals? Do you collaborate in that regard where you have a deal finder, you've got an investor, you guys come together, work something out? Do you include those type of things in the community?
Absolutely. We cover all sorts of creative financing. That's always a big topic, no matter how much money you have, right? Even to this day, I try to do everything I can to not put my own cash into deals, right? And there's creative ways to do that. So yeah, the ideal customer for the coaching is 30 to 50, probably owns a couple of residential units, right? But they're tired of dealing with tenants. They're tired of dealing with residential investments. They're realizing, hey, maybe I can't scale this, or maybe it's a bigger headache than I thought, or maybe it's just not as profitable as I thought it would be. And what's that?
You literally just described me.
Yeah, there's a lot of you out there.
I used to love people. Now I can't stand them.
Oh my gosh. Well, and the thing is too, I used to sell multifamily. And so we would go and tour apartment complexes. And when you start to see how some people take care of and live in these units, it makes you never want to go near them ever again.
Oh, yeah. I've seen some disgusting things that you can't stand in there for a second more. It's not safe.
Oh, we opened one door. This lady was living in this house, trash everywhere and cockroaches crawling all over the countertops. And she was just hanging out on the couch watching TV as if it was fine. And I was like, burn this place down. I'm leaving. No thanks.
I've seen some pretty similar things. Just despicable. it's sad to see how people live, actually, and that's their normal. That's really sad. That's what what they grew up in themselves, and they don't know any different.
That's right. And so when my girlfriend yells at me for leaving my jacket on the bedpost, I'm like, you know what? It could be worse. All right, it could be way worse than this. But so those are typically the client profile of what we're working with. And so whether you have experience or not, or whether you have capital or not, I still do deals to this day where I'm not putting capital into it. It just depends on, are we raising that capital from investors? Are we negotiating for seller financing? Are we negotiating a seller carryback? There are so many ways to do it. So, in the group, got some guys that have just graduated college that have joined. They just know, obviously they don't have capital, but they know if they learn more about commercial real estate and they learn how to find deals and put them together, that investors will want to give them money for the right deal. All the way up to, I've got people that have sold their businesses for multiple 7-figure exits, and they're just looking for a better way to build their investment portfolio. So it's runs the gamut.
So are you familiar with Cody Sanchez?
I am.
Yeah, she's amazing. Follow her. So she's always, talking about all these baby boomers wanting to sell their businesses and get out. So what would you say in that regard are some of the best business opportunities in the commercial space that you're finding these days?
Like business opportunities or real estate opportunities?
Both. You buy the business and in the real estate, kind of with the business? Like they go hand in hand, or do you not really specialize in that or teach that at all? You just more of like the real estate aspect?
Yeah, we do more of the real estate aspect. I mean, I personally am looking for, HVAC. So like I own a commercial property management company, right?
Okay.
We manage about 2.1 million square feet. So I look at our P&Ls and I'm like, we spend a lot of money on HVAC, we spend a lot of money on roofing, and we spend a lot of money on landscaping. So, those are businesses that I'm interested in buying so that I can implement them in what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, right? Because if I buy a company, since I am probably going to be one of the biggest customers, I can immediately increase the value of it, right? Just by giving us another contract. So like that's the beauty of vertical integration when you get into this industry, right? As far as like on the like business real estate side, I mean, self-storage, it's always a good one, right? You got to be careful about oversaturation in certain markets nowadays because everybody and their grandmother seems to be building self-storage. Flex space is great, right? Hotels can be great. It just depends on how you want to really set it up. Like I'm building a 48-room boutique hotel 2 blocks away right now here in East Nashville. And, that will be managed by a third-party manager, right? I didn't want to figure out how to run a hotel on my investor's capital. So we went out and hired, I interviewed 25 different boutique hotel management firms and settled on one out of Texas. So yeah, I mean, sometimes it's just about bringing the right team in.
Are they going to do that remotely?
So like their headquarters is remote, but they will actually hire and manage the on-site staff.
Okay. And how much does it cost to be in the accelerator group?
Well, right now, as of today, it's $10,000.
Annual?
Yes. So March 1st, we're moving to an annual model. It used to be lifetime access. So through the end of February, that's funny that you asked that because we just announced on Friday that we're ending the lifetime access. So everybody that is in before the end of February gets lifetime access. Everybody after that, it's $10,000 annually.
Wow. So if you join by end of February, it's 10 grand?
That's right. Yep. For life.
For life.
Yeah, it's a steal. That's why I'm getting rid of it.
So can Holly and I go halvesies on this deal?
I wish I could right now. Okay. Life goals. And okay. So go ahead, honey.
So I wanted to circle back. What are your favorite markets right now that you're looking at? Maybe up and coming markets or markets that have piqued your interest?
Yeah, great question. I mean, look, Nashville always in the top, right? I mean, it's where we're based, and it's such a great city. It's got a lot of things going for it. There's a lot of reasons as to why Nashville will continue to do well in the future. Dallas Fort Worth is an incredibly hot market. I don't know.
We'll be there tomorrow.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
I don't know how anybody's keeping up with what's going on there. I mean, when I was a kid, Dallas and Fort Worth were two different cities, and now they're basically suburbs of each other, which is wild. It's growing fast. I mean, Texas is a great state. I like Denver a lot. I think Denver's really cool. I like Raleigh, Durham, Charlotte. Those are pretty cool cities.
Anywhere in Florida?
No.
Sorry, honey.
Kind of a bait question. Besides Miami, I mean, Miami is basically going to be it. I mean, the way they're building Miami right now, it's like a mini New York. It's absolutely insane. My brother-in-law works for an electrical company, and he's building these 100-story high-rises that are just absolutely incredible. And some of them are going to have residential space. We're actually going in a couple weeks down, and my sister-in-law are going for an event. But I said to him, I was like, can we get like in some of these spaces? Like real estate's kind of my thing. So I want to go see. So I'm super stoked about that. But yeah, I know Florida's kind of
everyone's gone cold on Florida, Lonnie.
Yeah.
Well, Florida's just tough. I mean, it's there's a lot of reasons to move there. I mean, it's always on our investors' radars because it's a income tax-free state, right? Which is always a big deal. In the fall, the Urban Land Institute, which is like the largest publication for commercial real estate investors to follow, announced their top markets for the year, and Tampa was on that. But that was before the hurricanes hit, right? And so you had back-to-back hurricanes hit immediately after that, and people were already starting to get a little leery on the Florida real estate market simply because of these natural disasters. And then you had two massive ones happen back to back, and with insurance companies pulling out of Florida, and I mean, you can get into the political environment on how Florida has changed over the last 5 years, 10 years. I mean, growing up, everybody in Nashville used to buy a place in Florida to go. And now people are starting to look more towards the East Coast, which is really interesting. North Carolina, South Carolina, maybe even Savannah, Georgia.
So I'm in the Tampa Bay market. We actually call them like people that come from the Northeast, then move down to Florida and then move back to like Tennessee, Carolinas. We call them halfbacks. They didn't go all the way back. They went half back.
That's right. Yeah, that's hilarious. It's, people have a totally different vision of what these cities are before they get there, right? It's like all these Californians moving to Austin, Texas. Well, guess what? It is hotter than hell there in summers. You know what I mean? Like Californians are not used to that. So they get through their first Texas summer and they're like, actually, I'm going to move to Tennessee.
I want to go back to North Carolina for a second, though, because my mom's trying to move to Greensboro. Right now, she's in Johnson City, but she absolutely hates Johnson City. She wants to go to Greensboro. She's convinced that's going to be the place. But oh my gosh, how cheap it is there. I was shocked because Raleigh's not cheap and it's like right there. But but Greensboro and Winston-Salem are still super cheap. So that might be.
Yeah. I mean, they're relatively undiscovered. I mean, my girlfriend's family lives in Greenville, South Carolina. I had never even heard of it until we went there to visit her family. And now I hear about it all the time. I mean, that's
where my family's from.
Yeah. It's
Greenville, Spartanburg.
Yeah, it's great. It's got an incredible downtown. They've got one of the most beautiful hotels I've ever seen in my life. They've got these massive waterfalls that run through the middle of downtown. Like it's a really cool, walkable little city. And it's not too big, which is really cool. So there's a lot of little cities out there like that. I mean, if you want to get into even smaller cities that I'm liking right now, Louisville, I think is interesting. I think Chattanooga is interesting. I would say Huntsville, but Huntsville's kind of boring in a lot of ways. It's a very hot market for sure, but it's to me, I also have to have a little bit of flair. So Birmingham to me is cooler than Huntsville.
I'm invested in Hot Springs, Arkansas. So if you want flair, definitely take a look at Hot Springs. It's a wonderful. Let me go to assets though, pivot away from the markets because I'm very curious. Like on the residential side, it's really hard to cash flow right now. So I'm curious in your world, what is cash flowing? Like what's an attainable, accessible cash flowing asset right now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I've always thought that residential cash flow is tough anyway, So when you add higher interest rates on it, but I remember back in the day listening to these like Bigger Pockets podcasts and people are talking about, oh yeah, you refinance, you make $150 a month, you get all your money back and then you move on. And it sounds good, right? Like you're netting $150 a month without having any cash into it. But if an HVAC unit goes out, you've lost all of your profit for a year. So like your margin is so slim for the amount of potential work that could be done on that, where it's like, I mean, if a tenant calls me one time a month, I've already lost money based on my time value of money. You know what I mean? Like, so it really adds up. I mean, honestly, anything in commercial real estate can cash flow really well. I mean, we don't do anything unless we're getting about a 20% annualized cash on cash return. And that includes office space. I mean, there's some offices that are doing fine. I mean, I'm sitting right now in a 28,000 square foot office building that I bought back in 2019. It was ugly as sin and needed to be, at least cosmetically renovated. The bones were fine, cosmetically renovated. It was at 40% occupancy. I mean, it was horrific. And we're 100% occupied today, right? So even office is generally okay. It just depends on kind of what you're doing. We're about to do a self-storage deal. I've got one partner in that. He and I are doing a 1031 exchange into it. We're going to build 350 units. By the time that's stabilized, we'll be cash flowing $15,000 a month each. So it's hard to, that's for 1.5 million, right? So if you look at that, it's like, okay, well, for 1.5 million, I can make $15,000 a month. Why wouldn't I do that?
Yeah. So are you typically in your world, are you seeing like syndication and gathering investors together, or is there another? Because I'm thinking about people like me and people like a lot of our listeners who that to me has always been super intimidating. I've been to training seminars on syndication. I've learned a lot and I still have like a psychological barrier about that. So I'm wondering for other people like me that just kind of like to go things maybe solo and like figure things out on their own and try to find the funding or leverage their assets. What is like an accessible asset that still can cash flow that you don't need to gather a big syndication group together to make it happen?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do things on your own, I think that's a great thing to do, right? Because you'll never have to worry about bad partnerships and dealing with all that kind of stuff. You just got to be prepared to work a lot harder for a lot longer in order to do that, right? I mean, it's just a sacrifice you've got to make. I mean, now I'm sitting today on a portfolio of over $60 $65 million worth of assets that we've acquired since 2019. Not a chance could I have ever done that on my own, because you think about how much cash that would take. We went and raised it from investors, right? And so we've built a significant amount of equity off of that. And now, I mean, we stopped acquiring for the most part. I mean, we just bought a $2 million self-storage facility. So subtract $2 million from that. We acquired $63 million of the real estate through from 2019 to 2022. And since then, I've just been doing kind of smaller one-off deals, like this self-storage deal by myself with a partner. I'm about to buy a building to build out my own YouTube studio and event space. I won't have any partners in that. So I kind of made the sacrifice for 3 or 4 years of going out and raising the capital and doing these much bigger deals to scale a lot faster, so that now I can go and do whatever I want. So it just all comes down to, what you're comfortable with, right? I mean, you can start small. My first syndication technically was a little $575,000 office building. It was a 2-tenant building. I brought in 2 investors for $50,000 each. I rolled in my 3% commission on that deal, which was like 18 or 19 grand. And then took an additional 10% just for putting the deal together. So I got 25% of that deal, and we knocked it out of the park, So I mean, that, like, you don't have to go really big. I mean, that was literally me calling 2 friends that I knew had money.
Right. That's true. Yeah, you're right. I think a lot of us overcomplicate in our heads, but you just simplified it pretty well. SBA loan, is that something you see often, using an SBA loan to acquire commercial properties?
Yeah, I mean, there has to be a business involved in it, right? So you typically see that with maybe a self-storage facility, more often than not hotels. And then we'll have owner-occupied businesses that'll do it, right? So maybe an HVAC company that wants to buy their own building will use an SBA loan. So it's not uncommon. I typically recommend against them if you don't have to do them, just because it is it's just a pain. It's such a pain to go through the approval process on them. It takes longer and the interest rates are higher, but people do it because you only have to put down 10 or 15%, right? And so you can save a significant amount of money. The thing that I tell people on that though is, having more debt is not always a good thing, right? Because your monthly mortgage is going to be higher. And with interest rates where they are today, it's going to be a lot higher. So you're really just stacking on the risk.
What about cross collateralization? Are you familiar with this? Where you own an asset and you own it, let's say outright, and you take that asset and you use it as collateral, and you kind of need to do a BRRRR, right? You can go and buy a commercial asset, I suppose, but it kind of needs to be a rehab so that you pull out the equity and pay back the bank that held the collateral. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, let's say you own your house outright. There's a couple of different ways to do it. One, you could refinance, right, and pull all of that cash out and then go use that cash to buy something else. Or you could do what's called a line of credit, right? So the reason that people will do a line of credit instead of just refinancing, you don't have to spend that money or you don't have to start paying on a mortgage payment until you actually draw down on all of that capital, right? So we've got a client that just did it. He just built a $1.3 million industrial facility. He paid cash for it, and he went and got a line of credit against it so that when he finds his next deal, he can then pull all of that cash out and go do that. And as soon as that one's stabilized, he'll refinance, pay off the line of credit so that he's no longer paying on that note, and he'll have a new note for the new property. So there's a couple of different ways for you to do it.
That's interesting. Because one thing I learned with the duplexes, you're limited on how you can access that equity. It's not like a residential single family, and it sounds like you have a little more flexibility on accessing equity for a commercial property. But small multifamily, duplex, triplex, quad, you are limited. So the only thing I've figured out how to do, and now it's anyone that's listening that only is like me that only has these small multifamily, is if you can get one of those properties even down to 0 owed and you own it outright, then you can actually take that one asset and literally use that as collateral with a commercial type lender. Am I right? Like, is that something you've heard of people doing to go and...
Yeah, I mean, like if you're personally guaranteeing a note, your equity in that is going to be probably used as collateral anyway. But like you would really, the better thing to do is probably refinance and pull the cash out and then go use the cash on something else or do the line of credit.
It's so hard you bought property back in 2021. I mean, it's so hard to touch the interest rate. Like it's so hard to think that asset that you have that is either owned outright or is such a small monthly payment that you would now slap a big monthly payment on it.
That's right. Yeah. But I mean, the reason that you would do that is because you're going to get such a larger return by doing another project that it more than pays that. Right. Because I mean, the problem is, like, even if you own the property outright, it's not like you can just say, hey, bank, take this $500,000 house as my, like, they can't apply that as credit for for really anything, right? Other than just backing your guarantee of a commercial loan, right? So unless you like sold it and took the cash and applied that towards your new deal, then, I mean, they obviously will take your $500,000. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, okay, well, if we're going to take a 7% mortgage, but I'm going to make 20% cash on cash return, I'm still making 13% cash more, even by having a 7%. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. It's like an emotional thing or something. It's hard to swallow it, but you're right. I know. We should think of it like that. What about like, what are some cool podcasts that you're into right now? And maybe like the last good book that you read?
Y'all are probably not going to like the last book that I've read, but I've been reading a bunch of historical and political books here recently. So I'm in the midst of The Rise of the Third Reich.
Oh boy.
Which is it's a hell of a
mess
book.
With our algorithms on YouTube.
Yeah, I know, right?
Be at the very bottom now.
I know, but I've always been big on history, and so I love reading history books. As far as podcasts go, I mean, it's kind of tough. I go through waves of like really great podcasts that I love to listen to all the time, and then I can't listen to them anymore. But one that's always good is How I Built This, right? With Guy Raz, just a great podcast. I'll listen to Online Marketing Made Easy, right? That's a good one. I'll listen to Alex Hormozy, Huberman Lab. I mean, there's a few different ones, but funny enough, I mean, none of them are really real estate related, because what I have found in the world of commercial real estate is that the podcasts are either or they're like institutional level. And so, the institutional level information is interesting.
But you cut out for a second for me. You said they're either what?
They're either really, really bad,
okay,
or they're institutional, right? Because I mean, anybody can start a podcast, but like the institutional
Look at us.
level is so
they just let anybody on here.
They let anybody do this.
I mean, hey, they let me do it. What the hell? But I mean, like the institutional grade stuff is great. So I mean, there's obviously an audience for that, but I really don't care about how the price of gold has affected commercial real estate investor sentiment in China. You know what I mean? Like, that's okay. Like that's that's a little too much. I need to know more about what I can apply today in my market. So yeah, but hey, How I Built This by Guy Raz, great podcast.
We'll check that out. And the last thing I kind of wanted to ask you, unless Lonnie had something else, I'm super curious how the Brandon Turner event was, the conference that he's putting on, and what it was like.
Yeah, the Better Life conference out in Denver from last year.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, it was great. Yeah, I mean, I've known Brandon since 2017. We were in a mastermind together, and it was great. I mean, he, the guy is obviously a legend in the world of real estate. I've been on his podcast. He's set to come on my podcast here soon. So, it's great. There were over 1,000 people there. It was really big. Lots of vendors, lots of great conversations to be had. I know that they're planning the next one. So yeah, if you guys are interested, highly recommend anybody go to that event. They just do a great job of it.
Okay. I think we're going to try to go next year.
Yeah.
I try to do one big one a year. And this year I'm doing Invest Her, which is a women's real estate one.
Yeah.
So next year, I think we might both go to the Better Life one.
I'm still on the fence with the Invest Her. I might make an appearance.
Yeah.
Why not? It's good to go to different conferences, right? You just meet new people.
Yeah.
Very true. Yes.
Well, thank you so much. Lonnie, was there anything else that you wanted to?
No, this was great. I love talking about the market and different ideas, and I love the creative financing strategies, and I thought it was a great conversation today. We really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Ladies, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I do want to say one more thing with and we'll put your link to your accelerator website in the show notes, but
yeah,
I love that you do give a lot of free, helpful tools in there, like the napkin sheet. Mm-hmm. And, so if you can't afford the $10,000, which I know I can't right now, unfortunately. Like, at least there's some cool freebie stuff in there. And is there anything else that you would recommend for a newbie that just can't really fork out for the group? Is there something that you would recommend, like a book, or maybe just listen to your podcast? Because you do give a lot of helpful information there. Yeah, I mean, look, working with me directly is very expensive. It's obviously worth it, but I know it's not a small amount of money. I mean, I've got a course on commercial real estate investing. I think that's $2,000 right now. We've got the Inner Circle. I mean, I do a live stream on YouTube every
every Tuesday morning at 8:30 a.m. Central Standard Time for office hours. So I had that this morning. I just open it up, and for 30 to 60 minutes, I just answer people's questions on commercial real estate, and I do that for free. So if you have any questions and you want to get some of my advice, it's free, so you're paying for what you get. You're more than welcome to jump on that live stream, and we'll dive into it.
That's awesome. All right, great. Well, thanks again for coming on the show, the Realtor Rant.
Yeah, we appreciate you. We'll see you in Nashville.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, bye.
Bye.